All right, everybody, for today's critical thought, we're going to be discussing the idea of moment-to-moment gameplay. This is a topic that I've talked about many times before, but we really haven't had a chance to discuss what it really means when we're talking about game design and pacing. Now, the moment-to-moment aspect of a video game is essentially what the player is doing pretty much consistently. It goes along with the core gameplay loop in terms of what I'm doing from the first 5 to 10 minutes in all the way through the rest of my game. It is I guess in another way, it's the handling of your title. What am I going to be playing for how long I'm going to be doing it for? Am I going to be running around shooting enemies? Am I going to be putting buildings down in a city builder? Am I getting into complicated first-person or third-person hand-to-hand combat? Whatever your moment-to-moment gameplay is, this is a crucial part of building the foundation of your title. But with that said, though, it's not the only thing you have to concern yourself with. And this is where things get very interesting in terms of what can keep someone invested in your title. Because you don't need to have on-the-ball moment-to-moment gameplay 100% of the time, but it can come back to bite you in the game design portion of your title, whether by focusing too much or too little on it. And there are very interesting examples of both. We were talking about this on the Discord channel yesterday, but Doom 2016, in my opinion, is a great example of moment-to-moment gameplay, but without a greater sense of growth or focus. Now, that doesn't mean Doom 2016 is a bad game. Far from it. It is an amazing sense of flow and that sense of exhilaration or the thrill of combat. And what you're doing in the core gameplay loop is having these 2 to 5 minute sprees of super focused gameplay where you are running, jumping, shooting, glory killing, you name it. And it's an exhilaration, it is a excitement, and you're going to feel like a badass at the end of that spree. The problem I had with Doom 2016, though, is that it doesn't go further from that. And you're just going to be repeating that same loop again and again and again. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad, mind you, but if you're expecting growth, and when we talk about growth, this could be its own topic, but growth from what we're discussing that can elevate or make a game get bigger has to change something about how the core gameplay loop works. So we're talking about new enemy types that have strategies. We're talking about progression upgrades that change your moveset. So incremental or abstraction-based upgrades don't work. Because I know some of you are probably going to mention from Doom the idea of upgrading your ammo supply, your health, your glory kill. I think there was something about that as well. That doesn't count. And the reason is that I'm still doing the same thing. Just because I have 50 more bullets or I do 5% more damage, that's not changing things. Now, the different weapon types, that would be a small example, but it still all feeds back into that same gameplay loop. And what I felt with Doom was that I played it for about 10 to 12 hours. I think I got just enough far into it that I was back from hell, and now I was just like, I'm not seeing anything else. I want something new. And this is a very important aspect of pacing and being able to properly break up a game as it goes forward. For instance, in Plants vs. Zombies, they break things up by throwing in the mini games every 5 levels. You could talk about games that throw in on-rails sections, stealth, boss battles, something that takes the core gameplay loop and does something different with it. Now, with that said, though, the moment-to-moment gameplay is still a vital part of your design. And the reason is that if you don't put some emphasis on it, it can lead to a game that feels like you're wasting the player's time before they get to the good stuff. And there are several big examples I want to talk about. The first is a lot from the open world genre. In my previous posts or videos about environmental versus level design, This has always been one of the big points about the open world genre, especially open world design, as we've kind of coined. And that is the challenges and the missions of these games are very exciting, but there is a lot of time spent doing things that are just boring. Nobody is playing an Assassin's Creed or Far Cry game and going, wow, I am really enjoying walking for 10 minutes or driving my car for 10 minutes to get to this next point. Or a game like Assassin's Creed where, wow, I'm just running around and hitting things, but nothing else is happening. These games require these additional subsystems to keep the player engaged. You have progression models, you have gear, you have the overall story over the length of 8 to 10 hours or more. And this is what I was just saying a few minutes ago, that the moment-to-moment gameplay is vital, but it's not do or die. And to give you another good example of this, games like Grand Theft Auto, Horizon Zero Dawn, and even Breath of the Wild feature very basic moment-to-moment gameplay. But what they do is they expand on that over the course of the play. In Grand Theft Auto, the running, driving, shooting, and fighting may not be all that interesting individually, but it's how everything is put together along with the story and the cinematography that elevates it. In Horizon Zero Dawn, running around hunting for plants and herbs and wood to build arrows may not be the most exciting use of your time. But then you get into the hunting aspect and dealing with the herds of, I forget the name of the creatures in that game. And Breath of the Wild is definitely a great example of how not having an amazing moment-to-moment gameplay can still not doom a title. In Breath of the Wild, when you start playing the game, you are not really playing the game at peak performance. When you're at the very start of the game, you don't have the health to survive combat, you don't have a lot of weapons, and the ones you do have break, your stamina is very low, so you can't go climbing crazily, you don't have any of the divine beast powers, you don't have any gear, and you don't have any additional options or upgrades unlocked from the Great Fairy Fountains. But what they do, of course, is that's all goals. Those are all the carrots on the sticks to get you to keep pushing forward. And as things go, you're going to start to see that change. When you get your first health upgrade, when you finally buy Link some new clothing, beating your first divine beast, these are major parts of the progression of Breath of the Wild, and they're going to push you forward to the next one, and to the next, and to each one of those shrines. Again, the idea is that while your basic elements aren't that complicated, it's going to grow. Now, the risk of that is that you have to be careful with how much of a focus you have on the long term versus the moment to moment. Because there are games that take too long to get to the good stuff. And we've talked about this before, where titles will demand that you spend 5 to 10 hours grinding or going through tutorial quests before the real game starts. And you can have that kind of section in your title. Anyone who's played a Souls game knows the famous saying, the real Dark Souls experience starts here. But that starts after the first boss fight. It's not like you have to get through the first quarter of the game and then it officially starts. Or something like Final Fantasy, I want to say 13, was also guilty of that. But the point is, you need to have a focus both on the macro and the micro layer in terms of your gameplay. Another example of a game that focuses more on long-term progression versus moment-to-moment would be the city builder genre. When you're playing a city builder, you are just plopping buildings down, and that's it. You're not going to be getting the full dose or the full experience until you've gotten your city completely built, and then it's time to start optimizing and mixing things up. But nevertheless, as a game designer, you have to focus on both aspects. If people aren't enjoying your game when they start playing it, they're not going to stick around to the good stuff. But if there is no long-term goal or no reason to stick around, players may not want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. This is also where we could segue into talking about variance in game design, making sure that each run or each playthrough is different. But that is certainly another topic again. But to wrap things up for today's critical thought, good moment-to-moment gameplay is always a vital part of your core gameplay loop. But how it grows and evolves is still an important aspect to focus on. One of the posters had a really great point when I discussed how much I got tired of the same moments. And what they described was the idea of someone who will fast forward through parts of a show to get to the exciting or the unique moments. And that describes me to a T. I have watched shows everything from Breaking Bad to Legion to even Game of Thrones, where once I start to see familiar story beats or things that I know how it's going to end up, I just fast forward through it. I don't need to watch the 15th example of a couple having an argument or someone being unsure if they're worthy of doing something. It's just the same kind of content that we see throughout a lot of these shows, so I just fast forward through it. And it's very rare for me to actually watch a 60-minute show for the full 60 minutes. I will usually fast forward through, again, the parts that I know how it's going to happen. If someone says they're angry with someone, I don't need to watch a 5-minute fight. I'm just going to fast forward through that and maybe the last minute of it. But again, getting the moment-to-moment and the long-term progression of your title right requires a lot of iteration and playtesting, and also understanding the pacing of your game. Being able to properly design levels so they're not too long and not too short, having those breaks in the flow to keep the player guessing, and again, there's a lot more we can discuss. But to wrap things up for today, for you folks watching this right now, can you think of games that have had really great moment-to-moment gameplay, but didn't really focus on the long term, but they still kept your interest? And likewise, can you think of games where you start playing it, but it's not really hooking you? The game isn't really firing on all cylinders for, let's say, an hour or even more so, and then it hooks you from that point forward. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. Be sure to check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great day, and hopefully you enjoy a bit more light for these videos. Until then, take care. Before we get to the credits, just want to give a quick shout out to the fans and supporters over on patreon.com/gwbicer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwbicer. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.